KBLKradio.com, and thank you for tuning in. We have an awesome show for you today, and everyone should be listening. Right now, I want you to text or call 3 people. Tweet them. Do whatever you need to do, and tell them to tune in to this show. Today, we have a good one for you. We have Dr. Cid Martinez, assistant professor at USD, and Armand King, founder of Paving Great Futures, with us. And we're going to be discussing the black and brown community collaborating together to fight against racial injustice. And we will also talk about racism on college campuses. Before we get into this, I have a joke for you, and here it goes. A man died and went to the judgment. They told him, before you meet with God, I should tell you, we looked over your life, and to be honest, you really didn't do anything particularly good or bad. We're not really sure what to do with you. Can you tell us anything you did that can help us make a decision? The newly arrived soul thought for a moment and replied, yeah. Once I was driving along and came upon a person who was being harassed by a group of thugs. So I pulled over, got out at bat, and went up to the leader of the thugs. He was a big, muscular guy with a ring pierced through his lip. Well, I tore the ring out of his lip and told him he and his gang had better stop bothering this guy, or they would have to deal with me. Wow, that's impressive. When did this happen? About 3 minutes ago, came the reply. News and current events. As everyone may know, there was a terrorist attack in Paris. Our prayers goes out to all those that lost a loved one or was injured in this heinous and vicious attack. But we must also remember, as we were reminded here, that not only are there vicious attacks going on there, but we got things, many folks dying everywhere, especially in places like Africa, where black people are also being killed daily, hundreds and hundreds. And so we have to remember that also, that there is a Holocaust going on all around. I want to share with you a story that I received from on the Union Tribune Online. It was Christina Davis, the San Diego Union Tribune, reported that, and I quote, San Diego County has far outpaced the rest of the state in the number of requests for relief under Proposition 47, according to data released last week. The law reduced simple drug possession and some other low-level property felonies to misdemeanors and allows old and recent convictions to be reclassified. In the first 8 months since the law was passed by voters last November, 1/4 of the state's Proposition 47 petitions for resentencing and reclassification of old convictions came from within this county, San Diego. Nearly 41,400. Los Angeles County, a region with 3 times as many people, pales in comparison, with about 25,100 petitions filed in state courts during the same time frame. Orange County filed slightly less at about 22,500. The numbers do not reflect how many petitions were actually approved by the courts. The data comes from the State Judicial Council and was highlighted last week as part of a report by the American Civil Liberties Union on the laws of implementation in its first year. That's not necessarily to say San Diego has more criminals. San Diego public defenders and prosecutors in part chalk up the high numbers to the county's swift reaction to the law. We had a plan in place that the day it passed, said Deputy District Attorney David Greenberg. The Public Defender's Office identified an initial batch of potential eligible cases, which turned out to be a huge number, and had the District Attorney's Office determine upon further review whether the defendants were truly eligible or not, end quote. Now, many in law enforcement says that Proposition 47 is not working because people that were convicted of drug felonies before Prop 47 passed were ordered by the court to sign up for a drug program, which law enforcement and the DA says get more people help. That's when you get a court order. This drug court came under Proposition 36. California Proposition 36, the Substance Abuse and Crime Prevention Act in 2000, was an initiative statute that permanently changed state law to allow disqualifying defendants convicted of nonviolent drug possession offenses to receive a probationary sentence in lieu of incarceration. As a condition of probation, defendants were required to participate in or complete a licensed or certified community drug treatment program. If the defendant fails to complete this program or violates any other terms or conditions of their probation, then probation can be revoked and the defendant may be required to serve an additional sentence, which may include incarceration. But now, many say because of Proposition 47, they cannot make these people go to drug treatment program because their felony drug conviction is reduced to a misdemeanor. D.A. Martinez told KPBS that, and I quote, "The number of people in court ordered drug treatment programs has dropped as a result of Proposition 47. Misdemeanor drug offenses come with 6-month sentences, while many drug treatment programs are 18 months, end quote. The man has also said, and I quote, "We support the law and we want to see it succeed. In order to see it succeed, though, one of the things I'm focused on is reaching out to get resources for mental health issues, for substance abuse issues, for housing issues, which are really key to turning someone around," end quote. I agree with Bonnie DeManis, and that is the right focus rather than punishment and criminalization and locking people up. Let's get the resources. Let's get the help for the people that we need. In regard to Prop 47, I also had someone to tell me that individuals that were ordered by the court under Prop 36 to enter his drug treatment program are now dropping out of his treatment program and are going back to court to have that felony reduced to a misdemeanor. The assumption is that all these people who are not ordered by the court to enter a drug program are being set up to fail and is more likely to reoffend. Well, let's look at a UCLA study. A UCLA study found that convicted drug users had become more likely to be arrested on new drug charges since Proposition 36 took effect. So in other words, Proposition 36 really didn't impact folks going and getting help and reoffending. The other problem with Prop 36 is that it is not retroactive, meaning that defendants who had to attend unlicensed drug rehabs prior to Prop 36 and the drug courts are not afforded the opportunity to have their cases reheard in court. Former Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger was critical of Proposition 38 because many in the program failed to complete treatment. So don't blame it on Prop 47 if people are not completing the program. About 34% of drug offenders actually complete treatment, and that was under Prop 36. However, Stanford's Law Justice Advocacy Project estimates that only 5% of offenders released under Prop 47 have returned to prison. Wow, that sounds like criminal justice reform to me, and Prop 47 is working. Prop 47 is working, and what we need are more resources. If a person has a drug problem, you cannot make him change by ordering him into a treatment program. We must address the underlying issues that lead to drug abuse and drug use in the first place. Let me tell you, I was ordered by the court to enter a drug treatment program, and I was still getting high in the program. They were dropping dope off for me at the back door, and we would get it, and we would get high. After about 2 weeks, I realized what I needed to do. I needed God and not a drug program. So I left the program. And when I left the drug program, the drug counselors that was there, they humiliated me. I packed my little bag, and one of the counselors said to me in a sarcastic way, "So this is you, huh? This is all you got?" And they was telling me that I was going to fail. And they were really, really trying to make it seem like I was making the wrong decision by leaving the program. The judge said I had a drug problem. The prosecutor said I had a drug problem. Even my homeboys and homegirls didn't want to be around me. I remember some of my homegirls laughing at me and said, "Corn, the drugs are killing you." My lawyer was hot that I left the program. I had a paid lawyer, not a court-appointed lawyer. I remember being in the law office with her and her law partners, and they were arguing about me, and she said, "But he has a drug problem. He needs help. He needs to get back into the treatment program." But I knew what I had to do. I went back to court, got sentenced, I did my time, and when I got out a week later, I turned my life over to the Lord. And when people stop believing in you, believe in yourself. Because the journey is going to be rough. Especially when people look at who you are or where you come from. Many times they tend to judge you and instead of encouraging you to try to change. I thank Yahweh because on December the 5th, or this December the 5th, will be 31 years that I've been over here serving the Lord. November the 5th, which has just passed, make it 20 years that I've been pastoring. When I got into church, I came straight from the streets. I was an unfinished product. It has been a long and rough ride for me since I've been in church. I've been rejected, talked about, lied on, mistreated, overlooked, laughed at, and yes, I had to cry. But I'd rather cry walking with the Lord than laugh with the devil. I've never been fully accepted even by my Christian brothers, and even now as a pastor, I'm not in the mainstream. But I did not, and I will not let any of those things stop me. And I encourage you, no matter what opposition you're coming up against, what people think about you, who accept you into their circles or not, keep moving forward. Keep believing in yourself when no one else believes in you, because the power of belief can help you to change your life and turn it around. So we thank you for that. And we want to move right on into our little show here. And I want to introduce my guest for you. I have, excuse me, I have Dr. Cid Martinez, and he is an assistant professor at the University of San Diego in sociology department. His research focuses on criminology, urban politics, religion, ethnography. I always get that one twisted, right? Immigration, social theory, and interracial relations, with an emphasis on Latinos and African Americans. His current research focuses on police and community relations in Northern and Southern California. It examines the relationship between urban politics, local police, clergy, and community institutions in fostering legitimacy and addressing violence. Dr. Martinez teaches courses in urban sociology, criminology, juvenile delinquencies, deviance, and social theory. He receives his BA, MA, and PhD from the University of California at Berkeley. Welcome to What's Happening Now, Dr. Martinez, and thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for inviting me. It's always a pleasure being here.
All right, good to have you. Armand King is a chef, community activist, and the founder of Paving Great Futures. Paving Great Futures is here to aid high-need, at-risk individuals gain employment, become entrepreneurs, become positive leaders in their community. Paving Great Futures was launched in July of 2014. The organization's mission is to provide the tools for people to transform their lives by fostering behavioral changes that promote responsibility for themselves and their surrounding community. This mission is accomplished through programs that provide entrepreneur training, job readiness, job placement, life skill training, relapse prevention, and substance abuse counseling for adults and youth in need. In the organization's first year of action, and it might be more now, 21 young men were placed in jobs with restaurants. Mr. King has lived experience being incarcerated for 3 years. He is a former drug dealer, pimp, and gang member. Welcome to What's Happening Now, and thank you for being on the show.
He wasn't supposed to say all that, but yeah.
He looking at me like, huh, what?
You're good for those ones. I've been around you.
So, I want to give an opening statement before I begin my asking my question. Well, and here's my opening statement. It's come from an article entitled "Building Black and Brown Coalitions in the Southeast." 4 African-American Latino coalitions, 4 African-American coalitions, that's what it says. And this was by Joel Alvarado and Charles Jair. And it reads, as the percentage of the United States population that is Latino has risen dramatically from just under 5% in 1970 to 15.4% in 2008, writers, researchers, community members, and activists have grown more interested in the ways African Americans and Latinos are relating to each other. Many recent publications have called for or evaluated the prospects of cooperative activities and coalitions to solve problems African Americans and Latinos often face. On October 5th through 6th, 2008, the first National Black Latino Summit meeting was held in Los Angeles. Prominent on this meeting's agenda were such topics as environmental justice, the criminal justice system, access to health care, and immigration. A substantial body of essays, articles, and books now exists on black and brown relations and the prospect of coalition building between African Americans and Latinos. Many, if not most, of these writings have something in common. They begin by discussing one or more difficulties or hardships African Americans and Latinos face, such as housing discrimination, inadequate schools, economic insecurity, profiling by law enforcement officials. They then argue that by uniting and working together, both groups could make progress in overcoming those problems. But ultimately, many of these writers conclude by cataloging numerous reasons why effective coalitions between members of these two groups are very difficult or have not succeeded. And so, Mr. Dr. Martinez and Mr. King, I have a question for both of you, and we'll start with you, Dr. Martinez. Is there a rivalry between the black and brown community?
Political rivalry? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Now, I want you to hold up the question because we're going to go to a break and we'll come back and ask you the question. Okay. But right now, we're going to take a break and want you to stay tuned. And when you come back, we'll follow up with the question. We'll ask the question again so everybody know. And so stay tuned, you all, and we'll be right back.
See you asking something.
Chris, can you put the video game controller down for a second?
I can talk and play. Oh, I'm totally annihilating this punk kid in Nebraska.
I just feel like you're not acting like a grown-up in our relationship.
Am too.
Well, you still ride your skateboard to work, there's the comic book collection, the race car bed.
Look, I'm young at heart, but I put money into my 401k every paycheck. I picked up a few savings tips at feedthepig.org. I have control over my financial life now, and that feels pretty grown up.
Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. Putting some money from every paycheck into a savings account or contributing to your 401k can make a big difference later. For free ideas and easy tips on ways to save, go to feedthepig.org. That's feedthepig.org.
So, I bet I look like a grown up to you now.
Well, except for the footy pajamas, I'd have to agree.
This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
Ranger Station, Ranger speaking.
Hi, I'd like to report a bear hug.
Yeah, okay.
Well, we were building a bonfire, and I saw some, dry brush and leaves around, so, I said to move the bonfire somewhere else, and out of nowhere, Smokey Bear shows up and hugs me.
So you noticed some wildfire hazards and moved your bonfire to a safer location.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Smokey, all right. He likes it when people help prevent wildfires. It hits him close to home. Not everybody gets the hug, my friend. So that's pretty special to get a hug from Smokey Bear.
So it was him. Hey, guys, I told you it was Smokey.
Okay, well, congratulations, my friend. And thanks for calling. There are many ways to prevent a wildfire. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
San Diego's source for R&B. KBLK.
Welcome back to What's Happening Now on KBLKradio.com, and thank you for tuning in and staying with us. Now, I was about to ask Dr. Martinez and Mr. King a question, and here's the question first to Dr. Martinez. Is there a rivalry between the black and brown community?
That's a complex question.
I know.
And if we're talking about politics, I think in the past, I wouldn't characterize it necessarily as competition. I would talk about it in terms of two groups of people kind of pursuing their own agenda. So if we take Los Angeles, for example,
right.
There's a history where Los Angeles had a black mayor, Tom Bradley. He was, I believe he was mayor for 4 terms, which is pretty impressive.
Right.
And he made his mark on that city. At that time, though, Latinos were not very much part of that political system during that period.
Right.
So it was an important time for African Americans, for political power, but Latinos were just kind of out of the scene. They weren't really involved. And then there was a fear when Antonio Villaraigosa became mayor of Los Angeles. This is the first Latino becomes mayor of Los Angeles.
Nice guy, too.
Yeah, he's a nice guy. Very, very charismatic. And so there was a concern that some African Americans had that he was going to lock them out, that he was going to get some payback for Latinos being marginal, right?
Right.
And I think if you think about Antonio Villaraigosa, that's not what he did. One of the things that empowered him, that gave him a base to work off of, was forming alliances with African Americans.
Right.
So I think we're at a period now where it's not so much a rivalry, but they're learning to get to know one another, and I'm starting to see a lot more movements, at least a lot of rhetoric in Los Angeles, where people are talking about the importance of black and brown. So I think for a while, because of the way urban America was designed, the history of segregation, that we were relegated to different parts of the city, never really got a chance to know one another. And I think we're at a period now where as urban America becomes more diverse, like in places like South Central Los Angeles, East Oakland, West Fresno, all over the state of California, where the populations are coming together, and I think they're starting to see that they have much in common, as you just mentioned. Introduction.
Thank you. Mr. King, do you see a rivalry between the black and brown community?
Yes, I do see a rivalry between the black and brown community, but then there's a rivalry in every community. This country was set up, and part of their power base was divide and conquer. That you can't have people united and run a system like they run a system, or else their system would not exist. There's a rivalry between Christian and Catholic, Baptist, Muslim, Jew. There's a rivalry between Republicans and Democrats. There's always rivalries and these separations that keep people separated so they don't focus on the problem, which is the powers that be. So yes, from the prison system, they keep us separated. They also, rivalries are created all over this country. There's agents that our purpose is to keep people divided so that the powers that be can remain in power, because once people start uniting and looking past these rivalries, then the powers that be no longer are powers that be, and the people are the power, which it should be. So there is that rivalry, but that's the problem. We need to concentrate on the solution. So we need to recognize where the problem came from, who's throwing the rock and hiding their hand, and now move past that and start. Let's all totally put our focus on uniting, because black and brown, we face the same problems. We're in the same hoods, facing the same police brutality, facing the same impoverished conditions. You know what I mean? So at some point, we need to unite. We need to start working together and find that accord that we can work together and move forward. You know, so instead of, let's not focus on the rivalry. Let's move past that, and please stop taking your orders from people in prison who have nothing to do with their life but stay in prison.
Thank you.
Let me just add that, because that's usually the way we're talking about it, is the way the media frames it, right? They always highlight conflict, they always highlight rivalry, and the way that, you know, when I did an ethnography in South Central LA, I lived there for a year, and this was one of the issues I wanted to know about. And as I got to know people, I found out it was pretty complex. And instead of starting with the idea of, is there a rivalry, I asked a simple question. I said, what are the conditions in which there's cooperation? What are the conditions when there's avoidance? And what are the conditions when there is conflict? So to try to open it up and say, well, what about the instances where we work together? What explains that? What explains that? What are the conditions that create conflict when that happens? Doesn't happen a lot, but occasionally it does happen, right? Occasionally there is a competition. So trying to understand each of those and starting with a broader question like that opens up a discussion for a richer understanding of black Latino relations. Because I think that's the problem, as you mentioned, people frame this issue in terms of, is there competition? Is there conflict?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah, and it's much broader. You know, what about the cooperation? What about times when there's avoidance? Right, we need to try to understand those outcomes as opposed to just focusing on rivalry. That's the way I would start to address the question.
My brother Jay, he always says, if you concentrate on the problem and you always talk about the problem, you're going to get more problems. But if you concentrate and you talk about nothing but the solutions, well, you're going to get more solutions, right? So in LA and San Diego, our demographics, they're really different. Like, we have a lot of cooperation, and we get along with our Mexican brothers here in San Diego a lot more than LA. But LA is just more of a chaotic city in general, period. Not just the black and brown, the black and black, the brown on brown. You know, the conflicts are way, way deeper there. Here in San Diego, we can be an example for the Los Angeles, and let's continue our working together and continue to be good people. You know, we're mixed here. You know, and really black people, only 6 of us in the city, period. You know, and our Mexican brothers, there's plentiful. They're deep. Their country's right here. We're on the border of Mexico. We need to work together, because by ourselves, it's going to be a harder fight. So we definitely got to work on the unification of the black and the brown, and really get back to before this place was colonialized and taken over, because this is the Mexicans' country. Let's not forget that. This is their country that was taken over hostilely. You know what I mean? And way before Christopher Columbus bumped his head and called himself discovering this land, which he did not discover. There was already African trade coming in and out of this country and this land. We were back and forth already. We were brothers at once. Let's get back to that.
And I think that's an important part, if we think about cooperation as a possibility, right? What are the conditions?
Right.
And one of the ways to start to think about how we can collaborate and cooperate is to think about what do we have in common in terms of our history. Right. So the whole history of colonialization in the Southwest, where this land was taken from Mexico, from the Native Americans, and then seeing the parallels with slavery. That's kind of the starting point. And one place I spent a lot of time at, I didn't write about this in my book, but I spent a lot of time at Community Coalition, which is an organization in South Los Angeles. And one of their primary mission goals statement, or part of their mission statement, was to create black and brown unity. So one of the things they would do is they would try to educate people and say, look, here's our history, here's the African American history, here's the Latino history. Look at all the things that we have in common to try to create this consciousness about how to think about each other.
Now, this I have a follow-up question, because when you talk about Dr. Martinez, you mentioned marginalization of the Latino community and then the rose to power. I know that's in San Diego. That's one of the fears. I don't know. Maybe I'm an extreme way of saying it as far as one of the fears, but I know one of the concerns of black community that I hear here in District 4 and District 8 council districts that are kind of divided in Southeast San Diego is that if the Latino vote ever wake up and really become actively involved in the political process, they can really overpower the vote and put in whoever they want.
Change the tide.
And blacks kind of fear in the sense or concern about that being marginalized. But what do you have to say about that?
Again, we have to think about what we both have to offer. And one of the things that Latinos really need from African Americans is drawing on the history of activism and the history of developing this critical consciousness. There's much to be learned from Latinos. And there's also, I think, a lot of important African American leaders and leadership that Latinos need. The bottom line is, African Americans are very politically active. They vote more than most groups, And that's something that Latinos, if you go to, and I hate to go back to Los Angeles, but if you go to where I spent a lot of time in Los Angeles, there's a large segment of the Latino population that just doesn't vote. And part of that is that they don't have the institutions in place to mobilize that mass of people. So what I would say to that is the potential is there for a kind of complementary relationship. The Latinos have the numbers. We have the numbers, but we don't have the institutions, the political base that African Americans have developed, and I think there's much to be learned in terms of having a critical awareness. So they need one another, and I think if that's the focus, if they can focus on Latinos have the numbers, but African Americans have this toolkit for social activism, then I think that would help empower Latino immigrants. And I hate to say this, but one of the things about California, because we have such a strong distrust of law enforcement, of government, Latinos, that I think that's a serious obstacle. I'm driving around San Diego, there's a strong presence of ICE all over San Diego, and that's a big fear that a lot of Latinos have. So they're kind of reluctant to get involved because of this distrust they have. And I think African Americans can help be the bridge to bring them into the political world. So I hear this a lot.
That's a great way to work together, right?
I hear this fear that when Latinos come in, they're just going to trump everyone. But people have been saying this for a long time.
Well, we don't need that fear because we've been trumped already. It can't get any worse. So we need to unite. Let's get the vote and start taking over these positions.
Thank you. So, Dr. Martinez, I have another question for you. And I'm going to read a statement that I read online, and then I think the Voice of Viewpoint also printed it. It's a statement from Dr. Umar Johnson. And I quote, this is what he says, and I quote, "Some African Americans can clearly see the contradiction of having the black rights struggle integrated with privileged white women and gay movements. The U.S. government needed to find a non-white minority agenda issue towards which it could redirect its resources away from African Americans. The most effective weapon to date has been to use America's largest non-white minority group to draw attention away from the black agenda. Is what Dr. Umar Johnson was what he said, is it true or false, and why? And then Mr. King.
Okay, so this is it's in reference to the Latino population.
None of that's kind of what he's alluding to.
Yeah. Well, again, I think it's really important to find those common links between Latinos and African Americans, right? And the issues are the same. We want employment, right? We want integration. We want to. One thing I was thinking about before I came here is there's this idea of the color line that sociologists talk about. And the color line is how far are whites or the mainstream power institutions willing to integrate people into mainstream society, right? In terms of politics, in terms of employment. And I think for the most part, the same issues that African Americans face are the same issues that Latinos face. So, is the potential there for that kind of thing? Yes, but I just think there's so much in common. In mass incarceration, for example, all you have to do is go to any detention facility, go to juvenile hall, go to court, and look at the number of brown people that you see there, Latinos and African Americans, right? So I think that I don't think it's a distraction. I think it's just a matter of forming a united critical consciousness, and that it's not necessarily going to divert attention away, because, just to put this simply, black issues are brown issues. Brown issues are black issues.
And just saying that then, Mr. King, I know one of the things that you hear a lot about, especially within the black community, when we talk about this and what the government is doing or redirecting its attention and resources, is like the gay movement. They're fighting for civil rights, same-sex marriage, and things like that. And many blacks felt like, well, wait a minute, your civil rights are not the same as my civil rights, and the attention is being redirected somewhere else away, and some believe that is a deliberate act. And so I think the same thing they kind of see with other non-white minority groups. And in San Diego, we know that blacks are the minority of the minority. You have more Latinos and Asians than you have blacks in population in the and really there's like a black flight in San Diego City of San Diego, where blacks are leaving. The population is down from the last census, the last two census. The black population has gone down. But do you see that, Mr. King, that the government is or these groups, like the feminist white group or the other non-white minority groups or the gay movement, kind of taking attention off of the real issues in the black community that where focus still need to be?
They have, but who's taking the attention? Who's bringing the attention? It's the media. The media pushes what they want it to push. So I always tell people, be cautious of what's being pumped into your head. We watch the same news channels. That's where we get our information from. So the only way that the LGBT can be getting this attention is because the media is giving them the attention. Just like the France issue right now. You turn on the TV right now, that's all you're seeing. That's what's being pumped to you. But a few months ago in April, when 148 Kenyans, black Kenyans were murdered in a similar manner, you probably don't even know that existed or happened. The media chooses to push and promote what it wants to. So that's the only way that attention can get there. But what we got to do is forget the media, and we start working united and work against that period. You know what I mean? Don't let that divert you, because there's going to be constantly diversion. It's always been that way. It's never been different. Even with the Black Power movement in the 60s, where the attention went to the women's lib movement. It was used to divert people from that. Not that wasn't a good movement, not that the LGBT isn't a good movement, but the media uses these vices to keep what they're really afraid of from getting exposure. Now, if Black Lives Matters was on TV 24 hours a day, a lot more people would be tuned into it, right? But they're not showing that for a reason. So understand, it is all for a reason, and it is control. So we need to step outside of that box and just thinking what CNN is telling me is 100% the truth, and that's where our attention needs to be. Because even Facebook now, just because they're telling us what they want us to show, yeah, we need to wake up as a people.
And that's a good point. Who is saying this? I mean, is this who's
Who is
making
saying
these decisions? Right. That's a good way of thinking about it. And I think and this is a hard thing that a lot of people that I know, working class, poor, Latinos too, they ask, well, what do I have in common with the LGBT movement? And I tell them, you have a lot in common. And we have to understand that a critical consciousness is necessary for change, for pushing that color line that we talked about. If we get caught up in these divisive ways of thinking, thinking, well, the feminist movement doesn't have anything in common with African Americans, or LGBT movement doesn't have anything in common with Latinos, then we miss the potential for a more powerful united front to push that color line and to push for to change other kinds of marginalization.
Exactly.
Because it's not just the color line, right?
Right.
Discrimination comes in multiple forms.
That's right.
And so we have to understand, even though race is important for us, there are other types of discrimination that go on too. And we have to have a united critical awareness to fight those different types of barriers that are out there.
And I agree, and I think Ms. King and one thing, I used to be a big critic, and I know Dr. Martinez knows of Black Lives Matter, but past few weeks kind of had a awakening in a sense, which I should have already been woke up on this, but in seeing when I watch media and how they, at least my focus has been kind of looking at the way to treat blacks and black stories, and like what Armand mentioned about Africa. Those type of things are happening right here in San Diego, where stories are being overlooked that people should know about what's happening in the black community, and the media frames the narrative another way, or they move it to another arena, whether it's criminal justice reform or whatever it's dealing with. It always tries to stereotype and stigmatize and marginalize the black community and black and brown community. And when I saw that, I was like, I'm seeing the importance of Black Lives Matter, because in their eyes, black lives don't matter. We don't matter to them, or brown lives we don't matter to them. And to really get attention, you do have to stir things up. You do have to really shake the system in order for them to get a little attention. So I think Black Lives Matter have been very effective in getting that little attention that they did get, in the sense of stirring things up, because they don't care. The system don't care. I'm talking about, God help me, but even the white liberals don't really care about black lives.
Have they ever?
Thank you. But they make it seem like they do.
When?
On TV.
But and then at the same respect, they constantly show you. If you just pay attention, it's constantly shown we don't give a damn. They don't.
Right. You're right.
But this is an important point about Black Lives Matter. I know, and we had Pastor Shane was in here, and me, you had differences on this. But Black Lives Matters, I think, because it really is bringing to the forefront the importance of mass incarceration in the criminal justice system, and how it's deeply connected with race. We had slavery. Then we got rid of slavery. Then we had Reconstruction, and then we had basically legal segregation. Now we live in a society that's supposed to be post-segregation, right? It's illegal to discriminate.
Right.
So what else can you do? And so what a lot of people say, a lot of my criminology colleagues will say, if you really want to understand race, then you have to look at the criminal justice system.
Yes.
And that is what Black Lives Matters is doing.
Right.
And they're doing something else important, which is bringing that into the current liberal political framework. And nobody wants to talk about it. I mean, we've talked about this before. I mean, Bernie Sanders, that's why he got called on that.
Right.
I mean, he's ironically, he's speaking up more about it than anyone. But even he needed to be called on it, some people would say.
Exactly.
And so bringing that issue, it's not just about employment. It's not just about discrimination. It's about the criminal justice system.
Exactly.
All of those are intimately connected. And I think a lot of people on the left don't want to come to terms with that.
Exactly. And that you talk about the media and everything.
And we have the
media, same thing.
The highest level of mass incarceration ever in American history.
Right.
And it's mostly black and brown people that are in there.
That's it.
That is the new slavery.
It is.
Exactly.
So, prisons are on the stock market these days. It's a big business.
So let's move on. Mr. King, there are some groups that oppose black and brown alliances, and the excuse they use is that Latino takes jobs from low-income blacks. What do you say to that?
The Latinos are taking the jobs. I'm amongst my black brothers, and a lot of the jobs that the Latinos are taking, we look down upon through slavery and being that position where we were the servants, we were the housekeeper, we were all these different positions, the landscape, we were all these positions, and coming out of that, we developed this mentality where we're too good for that. Half the people I hang out with would never go get a job at McDonald's. They would never go get a job as a landscaper. We need to come up out of that. It's not that they're taking jobs; they're coming from a third world country where they're accepting accepting these jobs. And not only do they accept them, as soon as they get in, they get their cousin in, and they work hard. I'm right there with them. Latinos work hard, man. I'm with them. They will grind because they came from nothing. They're happy just to be here. And not only that, I've witnessed this on my own. Nobody has to tell me this. They will take the money and send it back to their families at home. There's a, we were, no fault of ours, we were broken of this family structure through slavery. We were broken of the commitment to each other. We don't even have a country that we feel we belong to. So we're in a disenfranchised state ourselves as black people, but the Latinos, they don't have that. So they come here and they grind, you know what I mean? And they work their way up. I see multiple people that would work that same job that we wouldn't take for 30 years. But in the meantime, they got their cousin, their sister, they got everybody in it until they work their way up to management. Now they running that business. Now they run the whole, I'm in the food industry. You can't go in the kitchen in San Diego and it's not filled with Mexicans. I've been told that if I didn't speak Spanish in a couple kitchens, I couldn't even be there. They've taken over those positions. And a lot of us who don't even have, we've been broken of work, work ethic. We come in, we still think we harder than hard. We don't, a lot of these jobs, we don't maintain these jobs. The Latino bros will come in, straighten up, and work that job. They will work it and grind it out. I'm seeing it on multiple levels, and it's not no fault of theirs. They're grinding.
Let me ask you
it's time for us to step up.
A thought, and Dr. Martinez, you can jump in here because I have a friend of mine. I'm not going to mention his name because I don't want him to catch some fire on it, but he's Latino. And he shared with me that, when he goes to employers to try to get them to sign up so where he can send people to him for jobs, he said one of the things that a lot of times these employers tell him is that he'll point around, he said, you see what's in the room, and it's Latinos. He said, this is what I want you to bring. And around by way, don't bring blacks here. And I know sometimes we'll immediately jump on that and say that that's discrimination, which it could be. Some of it could be. But I think you hit on a point that is important in the sense that when our black people do get jobs, they have to be work ready. They have to have the mindset to get in there and really want to put in what they need to do rather than going in there and sleeping and coming late.
And I don't want to even put that really stigma on all of us because there's some of us that are grinders and will get out there and work. But there's a lot of us that have lost that ethic, that work ethic. A lot of us feel we too good to do certain jobs, that we won't go above and beyond. After our first 2 weeks of work and we got that first paycheck, we feel we good. We coming in late already. We calling in sick already. This happens a lot. I see it. Don't be mad at me. I'm talking off first-hand witnesses. I'm walking these people in these jobs, and this is happening. We too cool for school. We need to drop that. You know what I mean? A lot of our Mexican brothers, family was raised to work from little kids. Some of them are not even able to do nothing else but work. And that's a structure that we lost, and we lost that through slavery, unfortunately. And when we were so-called freed and just left out into the wilderness, we lost that and didn't want to get that back. And it's a mentality we've developed and kept on till today.
Okay, I got a little comment for that too. And this is an issue that some economists and sociologists have been looking at, and the evidence is mixed. I haven't seen any conclusive studies that show that Latinos are taking jobs. I've seen studies that show that they aren't. Some say that they aren't. It's kind of a mixed bag of the research out there.
Gotcha.
And I think, Mr. King, you made an important point, which is a lot of the jobs that Latinos have are complementary. They're jobs that maybe wouldn't exist if Latinos didn't come here. They kind of create a whole nother sector of the economy that's complementary. So that's what I would say to that. And then the other thing, too, again, is, instead of focusing on having more employment that would provide employment for Latinos and African Americans, then the question turns into who's getting the limited jobs that we have.
Exactly.
Right? When we should be talking about expanding economic opportunity as opposed to fighting over or having a discussion about who's taking whose jobs away. Right? The real question should be is why isn't there more employment opportunities for people?
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. So we're going to move on because we only have about 10 minutes left. And I did want to touch on and get into this in regarding the Mizzou and campus, this what we already knew existed, but I know Dr. Martinez being an assistant professor, and also going through a lot of these systems, systematic racism that we have to deal with. You probably experienced some of these things because you're a professor on there. But this question is for Mr. King and Dr. Martinez. What are your thoughts regarding the accusations of racism on the Mizzou, which is University of Missouri campus, and some of the other campuses sticking their heads up now saying, hey, it's us too? Okay. Mr. King, go first.
Man, I just want to commend those brothers and others that stood up in Mizzou, and they made a statement, and I hope others follow suit, and I hope this trickled down to the NFL and the NBA. I hope. Thank you for doing that. If somebody hear me, thank you. But I think it's a beautiful thing, and I think we need to start standing up, and it's beyond time to keep your mouth shut and just letting the norm be the norm, okay? Stand up and unite. We have, the black and brown, we have common issues, we have common problems. You know, once that unification comes, then the powers that be is going to step down, and we'll actually see some real justice. We have never seen real justice, and that's sad, you know. I forgot what the question was, but I hope that's...
your thoughts regarding the accusations of racism. What they were saying?
Every system set up in America is a racist system, whether they admit it or not. From the way they administer the students, the education that they give to the students, the private colleges that we don't even hear about that's giving the kids extra knowledge. You know, it's set up. It's a racist system, period. The school system, the injustice system, the political system, they're all racist.
Okay, Dr. Martinez?
Well, I'm really happy to hear that the president of Missouri resigned.
Okay.
Because you had the student body president, who was African American. They threw a whole bunch of racial epithets at him numerous times, and then the football team backed him up in solidarity, right? And that's, I think, kind of what elevated the attention of the incident.
Right.
And then the rest of the campus started protesting, and then put a lot of pressure on the president. And I think what the straw that broke the camel's back there is that it made that university look so bad that they were worried about the donors.
Right.
So we're not talking about
money.
Right. And so the protests were effective because it gave that university such negative public relations that they had to do something about it. And then the other incident was Claremont McKenna.
Okay.
Right. So here's my initial thoughts about that. First, at the University of Missouri, I thought, of course, this would happen. This is the South.
Right.
The color line has been very different in the South compared to the West.
Okay.
Right. It's still a little more traditional. You still have remnants of that old color line, which was less accepting and more discriminatory than, say, in a place like California. And so I think there's this critical consciousness that emerged. And that critical consciousness can be traced back to Ferguson.
Right.
Okay. So here's the criminal justice system once again creating this awareness of what's going on. And a lot of people, just from some articles that I saw that movement on the St. Louis or in Missouri as a continuation of Ferguson. Right. So I think that's important. The Claremont McKenna incident was disturbing as well because the dean resigned there?
Yes.
But same kinds of issues going on. And the color line you would think would be a little different in California, but yet it's still there. So I think what's happening is a new generation of young people. They're seeing this connection with the criminal justice system.
Right.
And I think they feel like they're in a position to challenge that color line maybe in a way that they wouldn't before. But it's real. I mean, you know, African Americans are a very small percent of the CSU system. I think maybe 7%.
Wow.
Very small percent. I forget what the percent is for the UC system. Very small as well. So there's not a lot of representation. There's not a lot of support.
Right.
You don't see a lot of diversity for faculty at a lot of universities. So at the same time, we do have more Latinos coming into the system. It hasn't been much of an increase for African Americans, unfortunately. But we don't see the diversity in the faculty as well. And I think it's important that when students set foot on campus, they need to see someone that they can relate to.
Right.
You know, I had a good conversation with my colleague who gave a talk about this issue, and he said one of the most important things that helps students do well is kind of what you said at the beginning of your program, which is a little bit of emotional support in making that connection with people. And I think when the faculty don't look like the students, that's a problem. So the other thing that's problematic too is not just getting students of color in the university, but providing the support system to retain them and keep them in there as well.
Absolutely.
So race is, as Mr. King said, it's here. It's always here, and it's at the universities, and there are all sorts of microaggressions that students of color experience all the time. And without recognizing that, I think, then you get incidences like what happened in St. Louis.
Yeah, and one of the things I know you hit on, I want to ask Mr. King, do you believe that hurting the economic system is an effective way to protest?
I think it's about the most effective way to protest because they don't hear anything else. Rioting, boycott. Picketing. They have their reason to. They're okay. But when you hit them in their pocket, we're in a capitalist society, right?
Right.
Touch that pocket.
That's right.
They gonna feel you. Things gonna change. You know what I mean? That things will change. So yeah, touch the pocket, man. And really, what I do see happening amongst my Latino brothers is they're building their own grocery stores. You can go around San Diego and see a whole, Latino-owned grocery store that's not Albertsons or Vons or Ralph's. You see that. We need to start developing our own business. Stop concentrating. And I'm tired of begging for people to give us jobs. Give us jobs. We want jobs. If that same energy we go to uniting and making our own jobs,
right,
making our own businesses, and then after that supporting those businesses,
right,
then we'll have real growth. Then we'll have real freedom and be equal and be at that same table when it's time to discuss political moves and things to do. Okay? So let's stop focusing the energy on they're discriminating against me getting a job. They've been doing that since day one. Get over it. Let's start working on building our own stuff now.
Right. Now, Dr. Martinez, some say that these students took things too far, and it is not that bad on the campuses. Do you agree, disagree? Explain why. You gave your
that it's not that bad?
Yeah.
It is bad. And when the president of a university steps down, right, I think that says a lot. When the dean at Claremont McKenna resigns,
right,
that shows you that and that's what the president at University of Missouri says, I take full responsibility.
All right.
Yeah, and I'll say this, as bad as the climate was at that university, the fact that the president owned up to it, recognized it, and owned it.
Yeah.
I think that answers, and then I think the governor of Missouri said it was the appropriate thing to do as well.
Wow.
So when someone in that kind of position admits that there is a problem and takes accountability, I think there is a problem, and it was the appropriate thing to do.
Okay. So let's look at Mr. King. Don Lemon, Mr. Don Lemon, he said it was un-American to prevent freedom of press. Do you agree or disagree, and why?
Prevent freedom of press from what?
On the campus. What happened on the campus is that they didn't allow the media, the press, to come in, and they showed a clip of a student who had a camera, and they shoved him out and wouldn't allow him to, he was on public property at the campus, but wouldn't allow him to film what was going on.
Well, they're just showing you again in your face. How many times did it take for them to show you in your face that they're not for you? They don't want you to know what's going on. Obviously, this story wasn't pushed like it should have been on the news. It wasn't more coverage, but thank God for social media. Mark Zuckerberg or whoever designed that, you're a genius. Thank you. And we have a means of spreading our own for this new generation. I know a lot of the older folks aren't really on social media like that, but we are, and we spread the message, and so we do know. So no matter what the enemy or whoever uses their vices they use to distract us or to go against us, God works, and we have our way of spreading the media. But yeah, just like the Million Man March, you didn't see that nowhere, no coverage whatsoever. Not even BET. Not that BET is even a black-owned company. Viacom owns BET, but they will control what they want you to see. So I don't even watch TV myself. I don't even really know people that do watch TV. We're all our phones in our hand constantly.
Let me just say this, but on this one, the students that were protesting at Mizzou, that was actually protesting against everything, they actually prevented the media from coming in.
Good. Because the media they know the media. They're smart. They obviously were thinking, why would we let these people come in here, distort our story, put out what they want? Now, stay up out of here. That's what I would have said, too. We don't want your media. I got my phone. I got Facebook. I got Snapchat. We're going to put our own stuff out there. Yeah, stay out. What was they going to put anyway? They ain't never been forced. They never been putting out nothing good. No way.
That's true.
Don't come in here. What would they have done? Destroyed the story. Now let's keep this cutthroat. Let's keep it original.
And you can answer that, Doctor. But let me throw this question in. Also, you can answer this. Don Lemon also said that the college is the place where robust debate should be welcome and vigorously explored. Should the protests be centered on getting people fired and to squash freedom of press and speech, and along with the lines of and preventing the press to get in there? Should that what it's been about, or what should it have been about?
Well, recognizing the problem, right? First recognizing the problem, but you know, in terms of the media, you know, the universities always want to have control of the media.
Right.
Right. They want to have control and sort of frame it the way they want to. That's why universities have media relations teams and people like that, and that's their job. So I think if the protesters were smart, which it sounds like they were, they wanted to kind of define, frame it kind of in their own way. That's I think for the folks on that campus, for the students, it was important for them to have control of that media, and to the extent that they didn't have control, I think their message would have been lost.
Yes, right. Yeah, absolutely.
Doing their own media relations management as opposed to the university doing it, that definitely would make their movement stronger.
Right. Now, what about when we talk about the protest? I think a lot of times the message got lost because a lot of the focus is on they wouldn't let the press in there and so on. Should have been about that, or should have been about the systemic racism and why this guy got fired in the first place, or why he quit in the first place.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, they should. That no one focuses on the root of the problem. They just focus on what's going on right there and try and put that out there. But all this didn't happen for nothing. These protesters didn't just wake. Oh, let's protest. We're angry. There's been a build up over years. Believe that. And I don't know the full background in, but none of this stuff. Every riot that's ever occurred in America, every major protest that's happened in the world, it came from somewhere. It came from somebody, some group of people that were being treated wrong, not getting justice, not having full equality, that got tired of it.
Right.
But they always focus on, they're burning down CVS. That's the focus. What caused the problem?
Right.
Why is this dude gangbanging?
Right.
Why is this dude pimping?
Right.
Why is this person doing these things they're doing? Why are they mad? Go to the root of it. And I bet we find a common individual involved. I bet we do, but they don't want that focus, though.
Right. So, let me, Dr. Martinez, to hear about racism on a college campus lets me know we still have a long way to go in eliminating racism. What are your thoughts?
We do have a long way to go. We have a long way to go in terms of getting adequate representation, admission, right? In terms of faculty of color, in terms of creating an environment where students of color feel like they can be treated fairly. We have a long ways to go, but the universities are the place to do it. The universities are the place to do it because this is supposed to be a place where ideas are supposed to emerge, right?
Okay.
So if there's any place in America, and it's no coincidence that universities have always played an important role in social activism, the universities are the place to do it because that's kind of a social space where students have the opportunity to express themselves and to get other people involved. So if we're going to have change, I think it needs to start in the universities.
Okay.
It used to be in churches too, right, traditionally, but universities, I think, are an important vehicle for social change.
All right. So we got to go. I want to thank Dr. Sid Martinez and Mr. Armand King for being on our show. It was an honor and privilege to have you on. Come by and visit our worship services on Saturdays, 11:30 a.m. at 610 South 30th Street. Thank you for listening, and tune in next week for another great show on What's Happening Now on KBLKradio.com. God bless you, and hope you tune in next week.